So take your cake board. This one's a small one, it's only 6 inches, similar sort of size to a CD. So if you don't have a small cake board, then an old CD works just as well. And to begin with, take a scrap of 260 and we're going to make what we call a raisin. Okay, so I've just tied 2 knots on the same spot in that 260. I'm trimming off the edges and discarding those, and you're left with this small piece which we call a raisin. Okay, take your 11-inch round and put the raisin inside. And then you just want to inflate, and then we just want to put our cake board on the top and release the air. So you press down at the same time as you release the air from the nozzle. So keep applying the pressure, and there you have it. So our cake board is covered. So we just want to tidy up the back a little bit, snip off the nozzle, take a little bit of clear tape and just tape that down, and we're just going to tape the edges of the latex to the cake board, because over time that will just ping over the edge. Okay, so we're just securing that in place, and then just, mine's pretty central, but just nudge that raisin to the centre as much as you need to. Okay, and then take hold of that raisin and twist, and then take a little bit of 160, wrap that around, and then just tie a knot. And when you've tied one knot, just tie a second one. Okay, and this is just creating the attachment point for your cake board or for your CD if that's what you're using. Take another 11-inch round and inflate. So inflate that all the way and then let it down. And you're looking for something that's perhaps about 6 inches or so. When squashed down, it's going to want to cover your cake board. Okay. Next, take a bit of 160 scrap, quite a long piece of scrap, and place that over the neck of the balloon, and then just tie that all together. So that knot, if I can get my finger out, that knot has just trapped that 160 into the knot at the neck there, and then just roll that soft knot. We've not pulled it tight, so it's a soft knot, and just roll that to the end as high up as you can towards that nozzle. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do is squish the air into that neck. Okay, and then take your finger, push that deep into the balloon. You're aiming for that bit of latex that looks a little bit thicker at the bottom. Grab hold of the nozzles and knots and twist. Take another 160, wrap that around and just tie. Okay. And then once you've tied once, tie a second time. Okay. So you've got your attachment point at the top and you've got one at the bottom as well. Okay. And then take these tails, take your cake board and just tie the two together. And trim off any excess. Next, take a 160 with a good long tail. We're not going to use all of this. We're just going to wrap it loosely around the base. So it needs to just sit on the edge of the cake board so that it doesn't drop off. But you don't want it too tight. And then just twist off. Take that knot and nozzle. Pass that through a couple of times, then just break this off and tie a second time. And then just trim off any excess. Okay, and that's our base. Okay, so that's the base. You're going to need 2 5-inch rounds, and I'm using mocha brown. And I just want to use 1 stroke of the Qualatex hand pump, so that is inflated to 3 inches, and you're going to need another one of those. Next, take an 11-inch round and inflate. And when you've inflated, now let some of the air out. So we've just stretched out the latex, and we're now just going to let some of the air out. And you're looking for something that's nice and squishy. So perhaps 6 inches or so, I would say. And then tie a soft knot and tie as high on the neck as you can. So by a soft knot, I mean you don't pull it tightly. So you've just let the latex go. They're not sitting there. You've tied as close to the nozzle end as you can. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just roll that knot higher up the neck towards the nozzle as far as you can. Okay, so that's what you've got, and that's lovely and squishy. Take one of your 5-inch rounds, and we're going to push the air as much as we can into the neck of the mocha brown. It's quite tricky to do when these are so underinflated, but take the nozzle and put that on top of the nozzle of the 5-inch round. Now, we use this technique a lot, or I use this technique a lot in my designs. And you can get lots of different effects and looks just by the positioning of the knot that we're going to make very soon. So in this instance, we're not going to go across here. We're going to go somewhere up here because I want the face to be wider at the bottom than it is at the top. So I want it quite narrow here and then wider across the jaw. So I'm going to head over in this direction, and then I'm going to grab hold of those knots and nozzles and twist. Okay? So hang on to everything. Take your other 5-inch round and wrap that bit of neck around that cluster of knots that you're hanging on to, and then just tie a knot. And sometimes that's easier said than done. Got it. Okay. And then just pull that knot tight. Okay. And then you can massage the head a little bit. So that's what you've got. Next, inflate a 646. I've got a tail of perhaps about 5 fingers or so. We're not going to use all of it, so don't worry too much about that. But you do want this to be pretty soft. So take your bear's head, and I want to attach these 2 balloons at about this angle. So I want to create an attachment point approximately here. Okay, so I've got a little raisin. I'm just going to put that on top of my balloon, create a little flap and stick that underneath, stick the raisin underneath, and then take a little bit of 160 scrap and wrap that around the cluster. So we're creating an attachment point in exactly the same way as we would as if we'd put this raisin inside the 11-inch round before we inflated it. I just find with this particular design, I find it easier to use an external raisin because I can have more accuracy in where I position, how I position the head. So take your 646 and the attachment points on your head and just tie those together. And then you can trim off the ends. Next, take a 350 with a 5-finger tail and twist off a loop of about 5 fingers. And take that neck and nozzle and just wrap that through, okay? And then we want to make another loop to match, or as close as possible. And then just take that nozzle and wrap around just to secure everything. Make sure this is all nice and soft. And then take your bear's head and body. And you want to wrap that around, okay? So we can wrap the end of this 350 into that cluster of flower petal loops. And I'm just going to snip off the end. I'm going to put a little hole in the end just to let the air out. And then I'm going to tie that off just to secure that in position. Of that round, I'm going to go a little bit bigger actually. Really make it nice and soft. So that's perhaps about 9 inches or so. And then I'm going to wrap that into those 2 flower petal twists. And just let all that air out. And then I'm just going to tie that into a knot. So for this design, I start with my Edding 750 paint pen and I draw 2 white crescents. Then wait for all that to dry. I'm using a brush tip black Sharpie for the rest of the face. Then with my white paint pen, I'm putting white highlight. Do it as a triangle with sort of a curved top. And then we'll give him a big smile. And 3 little dots here. And for my bear's rosy cheeks, I'm using this palette of blusher. You may want to use a pink Sharpie if you're concerned about blusher coming off on a child's clothing. Okay, all we need to do now is attach him to his base. Now for attaching your bear to your base, you've got options. You can either use this bit of 646 that we kept and tie onto your base here, or you can wrap these ends in. And I think that's what I'm going to do here. I like to give myself options, so I tend not to sort of cut attachment points off until I'm right at the end and I'm sure how I'm going to finish something off. Okay. Take another 160. I'm using goldenrod, and then I just want to wrap this loosely around the top. I don't want to wrap this so tightly that it pushes the sculpture up. I just want this to go around the top here and kind of follow his paws a little bit. Okay. And then just wrap that around, take your neck and nozzle, bring that through, and then just break the rest off. And tie the 2 ends together. And tie a second time. Okay, and just trim off the messy bits. Take a little scrap of 160 and just make a very small loop twist of a couple of fingers and take that knot and nozzle through, and then make another loop to match that one. So just 2 small 2-finger loops. Okay, twist them together and then let the rest down. Just trim off the end and tie a knot. Next, take a 160 in yellow and make a very small, a very tiny loop twist. Okay, it's almost not a loop twist at all. It's kind of a cross between the loop twist and a pinch twist. Okay, hold on to everything. Take your 2 white wings and just wrap those into that little round bubble at the beginning. Okay, and then we just want to twist off a very small bubble, break off the rest, and then just tie that into a knot and trim off this end, this excess. Take a black Sharpie and I'm just going to draw a little face and some stripes on the back. And for the stripes, I like to use the flat of this fine point Sharpie. You get a wider band. And then again with my Edding 750, just a little bit of white in the eye. And I don't know why, but I like to do a little red nose. Okay, so you've got a little bead there to go with your bear on your honey pot. I'm going to use one of these U-glue dashes just to stick my bee onto this design. You can add as many bees as you like. I always say you're the artist, these are your design decisions to make. And just deciding where to put my little bee, and I think I'm going to put him there. Okay, now you've always got the dilemma of whether you want to write honey on the honey pot. I will give it a go. I'm probably going to wreck the design at this point with my horrible writing, but there you go. We'll see how it goes. So there you've got your bear design.